these two players depending on the opening that we get. Will it be, again, a solid draw, or will we have more? 1e4? That gives me hope. It's the Sicilian.
Sicil for the kill, and Magnus, not just the Sicilian, playing pawn to a6 on this last move. That is ultra provocative, doesn't fight for the center at all. It allows white a free hand. It's a bit of a move order trick. It's kind of asking white to open the middle of the board, because then black has much more options, but I've nearly never seen Magnus employ this one, and I think already the frustration's building. He doesn't want another quiet battle. He wants fire on this board.
So rare at the highest level that I often forget its name. I believe it's the O'Kelly variation of the Sicilian. It can transpose into other lines, because in the Najdorf Sicilian from the black side, you often include this move a6 with the pawn going up to d6 next. So just asking Wesley, do you know all the variations? Do you know what transpositions can occur? Maybe I can catch you off guard. And Wesley, he is spending some time here. He said he needs to avoid time trouble against Magnus Carlsen. I think playing d4 in the center right now is a good way to avoid that long-term pressure.
And it's so important to not burn too much time in the opening, because the critical moments will arise, the position will get messy, mistakes will happen, and the player who has those extra seconds in those moments, that's often decisive in this one. But Wesley does take the decision finally after spending a bit of time with that second move surprised by Magnus. He does take out the bishop to e2. With the black pieces in the O'Kelly, it's about getting that d5 break in early on. That d pawn from d7 moving 2 steps ahead. Is that something that Magnus is already thinking about? Or would you say his approach should be to start developing first before a central break?
Normally you want to get the pieces out, and I think this last bishop move from Wesley so might throw Magnus off. As you say, normally black wants to break open in the center very quickly. You're kind of waiting for your opponent to commit and you react accordingly. But white hasn't committed anything. White is simply developing. White's next move is natural, obvious. If black does nothing, white will just castle his king. So certain pressure on Magnus Carlsen right now. If he lashes out a move such as d5, black's queen would be forced out early. I think that might backfire. So I'm expecting a pawn push here, or black's knight to come out. Maybe the queenside knight. Either way, Magnus, he's the one to launch the surprise. The O'Kelly, I must admit, I've forgotten that name too. It's that rare, as you mentioned, Robert. But okay, now we're headed into more traditional waters. An open Sicilian, potentially, depending on Wesley's next move. He pauses. Will he take with the pawn? Will he take the pawn with the queen? Will he take it with his knight? Lots of options here for Wesley. So,
and in standard Najdorf territory, we see white capture this pawn with the knight, and black's pawns are in normal positions. He does, in fact, take with the queen here. So if the black knight steps out to c6 to attack the queen will slide back in front of the dark square bishop. And I have to say, this kind of reminds me of some games that Magnus has played from the white side of this opening. So Wesley saying, you can do it, I can do it too.
That was his kind of mantra in the previous game. He did mention, Wesley, that these two had a battle in the previous game, but with colors reversed from 2 years ago. So he's just copying Magnus's opening. He just says, okay, you often play 1b3, I'll play b3. You played the English opening a few years ago against me. I'm playing it this time, and now a variation, as you mentioned, Robert, that Magnus is quite renowned for, as the white queen most likely going to step back now, either to e3 or to the d3 square.
Following the best player on the planet when it comes to opening preparation, perhaps not such a bad idea, but really interesting there. The memory that Wesley has about all the games that they've played, even years ago, and just how they look at openings at the very top level. The knights come out, and I was expecting Wesley to blitz out the next move quickly. While he does pause a little bit, and he chooses another square. Instead of lining up the queen against a dark squared bishop, he lines it up against a light squared bishop. To me, this is a bit of a surprise, because putting that queen on e3 later on invites white's rook to the d line, which is opened up already. But this looks like it's not only going to come in the way of the bishop, but that eventual rook as well.
He does want to develop his dark square bishop, so he doesn't want to be in its path. And right now, Wesley, he can just develop his queenside knight. He controls the center. That's the good news. Earlier, we were talking about a pawn break for d5 for black. You often want to accomplish that in Sicilian defenses, but Wesley has that square under his control. But now we're getting into sort of a Sicilian dragon territory, where Magnus is going to develop his bishop to g7. That's a long-range piece, and it's going to be a fighting game. I don't think it's going to be particularly solid from here on.